All right, wonderful AP World students. This is Mr. Russell. I apologize about my scratchy voice. So let me explain to you what's happening here. I'm going to go over what you should have done for your one document DBQ. That was why I was so insistent today in class that the kids who were absent last Friday show up and do the makeup. Most of you did horribly on this, and I'm not surprised because this is difficult to do. If it was easy, it would not be called advanced placement. What I'm going to do here, I hope you're listening. If you don't know what grade you got, you should immediately pause this, go to Skyward and look at your grade. So I'm going to go through how you should have done this. And at the end, I'm going to show you exactly what it should look like. You can take out a piece of paper and you can copy it word for word and turn it in Thursday, not Wednesday, Thursday. And I will give you an automatic 100 and replace the lower grade. Now, I'm not going to continue to do this, but I was in a hurry this week. You know, we have crazy blue and white day on Friday. Trust me, we're not going to get anything done in the classroom. So I don't have time to do all this in class. And if you're a really good student, what you should do is bookmark or save this video. And anytime you want to learn how to do a one document DBQ Russell style, go back and look at this because we're going to be doing a ton of these. So anyway, let's look at the question from last week. Prompt, how did the Inca effectively rule their vast empire? Now, what I told you was the day before, I told you your essay was going to be on the Inca. And I even told you what to use for contextualization. And I told you, I said, listen, guys, I'm in a hurry. I'm always in a hurry. But I've only given you about 8 things to remember about the Inca. My document is going to be on one of those things. Okay, and so I talked about, let me see, they lived in the Andes, and they did human sacrifice, and they built roads. That's what this DBQ is actually about, roads. And they used llamas and alpacas, and they had human sacrifice, especially infant sacrifice. And they had calendars, and they built their capital city of Cusco and the other city of Machu Picchu. That's about all I gave you. So, and here's another thing that I did. I actually paused. This is in the wrong place. I actually paused the video on this slide. The lecture in this slide, and told you guys this is your contextualization for tomorrow. I said, you're going to talk about the Native American. I said, and I hope you're paying attention. Contextualization has to be about what happened before. So you really shouldn't talk much about the Incas in the contextualization. Almost all of you did. And almost all of you said they were tough. They did human sacrifice. On the AP exam, that's going to get you a flat out 0. Okay? That is not how it's done. So I paused the screen on my PowerPoint and I said, this is your contextualization. So I'm kind of verbally give you the contextualization because that's the first thing you do in your essay. So the Native Americans came over from Siberia. They were Asians across the land bridge into Alaska. And as the centuries went by, they fanned out all across North, Central, and South America, eventually climbing up into the heights of the Andes and becoming tribes we know as the Chauvin and the Moche and the Moche. And eventually they were replaced by the Inca, who were vicious and had roads. That's what your contextualization should sound like. So let me show you what your contextualization should have looked like. Now I'm sliding down here. This is kind of low tech. Here's my contextualization statement. Notice I actually have the word contextualization here. And many centuries ago, it's supposed to be 3 to 5 sentences if you're taking notes. It can't be short. So you can count my sentences as you want. I see a couple of typos here. I was in a hurry. Many centuries ago, Asians crossed into North America on the land bridge. Through the years, they spread through every corner of North, Central, and South America. As time went by, they even climbed high in the Andes Mountains of South America. They became known as the Moche and the Chauvin. Eventually, they were all conquered by a group known as the Inca, who had their capital at Cusco and built the ancient marvel of Machu Picchu. That's how it's done. It's very high bar. Now, most of you, I gave you credit for trying because almost nobody knows how to do contextualization. And in keeping with that, out of my 80 students, only about 5 kids actually did it right. But there you go. Now let's go back to the document up here. So how did the Inca effectively rule their vast empire? You can read this whole thing, but basically here's what this guy says. He goes, they came out of nowhere and attacked us, and they had these paths. Hint, those are the roads. They came in quickly, and they were also in league with evil spirits, and they wiped us out. Now remember, I should have made you read the sourcing statement before you read the document. This guy is a shaman, a holy man, and he's reporting to the chief. And he's basically saying, hey, please think of him as an assistant coach of a team. The head coach is in the hospital or at his daughter's wedding or something, and they get their absolute butt whipped by the other team. So this guy doesn't want to get fired. So he's like, well, listen, we weren't prepared. They had all these fancy plays we weren't ready for, and they came in and tore us up. That's what this guy's doing. He's kind of making excuses. Well, they came through these roads, they overwhelmed us, and they had evil spirits on their side. Now, remember, do not call this guy a liar. Don't do that in your sourcing. But you want to take this into account. So anyway, to sum this up, what you were supposed to get out of this document was one of the components of how the Inca ruled their vast empire was they had these roads, which I spent a lot of time on in class. So let's see my thesis statement. Now, a lot of you went ahead and did 3 parts, and I just want to explain to you, you're used to writing in essays in English where they ask you a question and you give 3 answers. That's not how DBQs work. You have to put down the evidence that comes from the document. That the essay that I haven't taught you yet, the only thing I haven't taught you yet, I've done multiple choice, SAQ, and DBQ. The only thing I haven't taught you how to do yet is the LEQ. And the LEQ is done like an English essay. This is not an LEQ. It is a DBQ. So some of you had point A, point B, and point C, but you're only supposed to have point A. So do not make that mistake Thursday. So here's the thesis, and notice it has the word thesis. And I just restated the prompt. The Inca ruled their vast empire by A, building a network of roads to quickly move their army. And I made a mistake and put down rebellions, not out down rebellions. Now, most of you got the thesis point because most of you did something like this. And I told you thesis point is low bar. Now, the next thing is the analysis. Now, this contextualization and this thesis go in one paragraph with no spaces between them. So scooting on down, what you're going to do next is your topic sentence, and you're going to spend at least 3 sentences. You're going to do a topic sentence, then you're going to spend at least 3 sentences analyzing the document. This is the easiest point on the essay. So, oops, looks like I made a mistake here. Oh, well, I'm not a good typist. I should have put an A at the beginning here. I should put an A in a circle at the beginning, but here we go. As stated above, comma, the Inca used roads to dominate their empire. That is referring back to point A in your thesis, and this is where you get the evidence and argumentation point. You can see this in document 3. Now remember, circle the documents. I can't circle with a computer, so I put parentheses around it. You can see this in document 3 where the other tribe was surprised. They knew the Inca were nearby and thought they could forecast their arrival time, but the Inca moved faster because of their paths through these treacherous passes. Notice I'm using minimal quotes, because if you quote a lot, you do not get the evidence points. And here I made an analogy. This was a dramatic military advantage that helped them maintain their power, and it might be likened to an NBA team, playing a game against a high school team. That is the easiest point. Most of you got it. So what you should see when I give your papers back, if you got the contextualization point, you got a C. If you got the thesis, I wrote a T. If you got evidence, I wrote an E. And the other 2 points left are outside evidence, which is an O, and sourcing, which is a S. So if you look at your paper and you see C, T, E, S, O, they're each worth 20 points. You multiply each of those points by 20. If you got all 5, you got 100. If you got 3, you got a 60. That's how I arrived at your grades. All right, my voice is really wearing out. It's been a long day teaching, doing makeup, and now making this video. I apologize about my scratchy voice. At least I didn't put my face in the video. Here's the outside evidence. Now remember, you have to use evidence that is not in the documents. And I originally intended to talk about the Kipu. And remember, I told you this is very hard to get. And so I'm actually, if I see you trying to get outside evidence and you're actually coming up with stuff that I taught you, but that's not in the documents, I will give you even the point, even though they will not give you the point. So just understand, this is why I'm making you memorize a lot of facts. Most kids do not get this. I'm hoping by the time we get to May, this will all be very easy and you're going to not outrun the bear, you're going to outrun the other guy. So you could have said, well, they had quipus to maintain records that gave them an advantage. Several of you got this right. Some of you wrote that they had an agricultural advantage because they had a potato that gave them plenty of calories. I thought that was very well done. I threw this in and you can read it yourself. This was not in the document, so it had to be something that was outside. But this got you 1 point, and the only thing we have left is sourcing. And remember, I have a long sourcing statement, and you were supposed to underline it. Very few of you underlined it. And the reason I wanted you to do that is so I could grade this very quickly while, again, I was watching my football team lose. It should be taken into account, missing comma, that this statement was made by the shaman of the tribe that lost the battle. I'm telling you who he was, and I'm going to tell you why he did what he did. He's reporting in his chief about their loss, and he may be bringing up the evil spirits and the Inca pathways to cover up the idea that he might not have been a good enough shaman to protect his tribe and their embarrassment about being beaten so easily. This is the equivalent of someone saying they cheated. Anyway, I again apologize one last time about my voice. For those of you, I hope you didn't turn my voice off. Lots of my students speed it up. I understand that. Here is what it should have looked like. Exactly what it should have looked like. So you may pause the screen and you may write this down and turn this in Thursday and have your score changed to 100. But memorize the steps of how we do this. The DBQ has 7 points, and it took me, I guess, years to come up with this so that I could give my kids something they could do in 15 to 20 minutes and illustrate that they understand 5 of the 7 DBQ points and not have to use an hour and a half writing this.